How does he do it? Lewis Hamilton, ladies and gents. How does he do it? This is a video I've wanted to make for a very long time. It is the most impossible, strongest thing to know about Lewis Hamilton. Something that is uncanny. He has this uncanny nature for race performance, for race pace. We want to have a look at some of his most recent race in 2023, 2024. We want to understand why is Lewis Hamilton so fast on a race pace? Sometimes he's impossibly fast on race pace. It's impossible to understand. You don't see this from any other driver, especially when they have a teammate such as the ones that Lewis Hamilton has had: George Russell, Alonso, Rosberg, Jenson Button, Valtteri Bottas. Lewis have had some of the strongest teammates, perhaps the strongest teammates. And now that he's at Ferrari, he's with Charles Leclerc. There's no one that can deny that Lewis has had the strongest competition in teammates over the years as a Formula One driver. He doesn't back down from a fight. He does not back down from a fight. And you can't say the same about every Formula One driver. You can't even say the same about Prost and Senna. Prost and Senna never liked being in the same team. They backed down from a fight. They never wanted that shit. Michael Schumacher made Ferrari give him an inferior driver in Rubens Barrichello. An inferior driver. These guys are incredibly insecure. And being insecure is not a bad thing. Everyone is insecure about something. But these guys, Alonso will run from that fight. He left McLaren. Don't forget, he was handing out money in the garage to McLaren employees to get favoritism, to get them to favor him over Lewis in 2007. Embarrassment. These drivers that people call the greatest of all time, they're scared when it really comes down to, can you really be in a car next to another driver who is just as fast as you? Probably faster than you. Lewis can. And he handles it with complete class. Because at the end of the day, he knows he's got the fastest race pace than anyone on that grid. Even Max Verstappen. All these guys, Max Verstappen, Alonso, Schumacher, they're not as good as they're allowed to be. They're as good as the team allows them to be. The team gives them favoritism. The team says, you're our number one. He's our number two. Lewis is okay with going into a team and he's like, I don't really care. I'm just here to race. That's what I love about Lewis. And that's what the haters hate about Lewis. That he's so bold. He's so damn fast on a race day. So let's go back and look at this incredible overtake. This is the last overtake as a Mercedes driver. The last overtake of his Mercedes career. The last overtake of the last lap of the last race. He loves doing that, doesn't he? You can go back to 2008. He loves doing this, doesn't he? Just in case you thought it was a fluke. Nah, this man is on a different level. No, he has this crazy race pace to catch George Russell. What, 13, 14, 15 laps to go? Honestly, I don't remember how much laps, but the seconds. He was about 13, 14 seconds away from George Russell. He's able to catch George Russell without burning out his tires. Any other driver would deplete their tires going up against a guy who's fast as George. And let's be honest, George was on the better tire. George was on the hards. Is it hards or medium? I think it might be mediums. But he was on the tires that would preserve him for the longest. Lewis was on the faster tires. Yes, you can catch, but can you pass? Lewis had a similar situation in Las Vegas. This is Las Vegas last year in 2024. George Russell won that race. Congratulations to George once again. But Lewis started, I don't even remember where he started, but he started at the back, bro. He started, was it like 14, 15? I can't remember exactly, but he started far down. The man, there was no safety car, by the way. So you can't say, oh, but there was a safety car. Lewis saved 10, 20 seconds. No, there wasn't any safety car. He caught up to George to like 4 seconds. And then because he simply ran out of tires, he fell back down to like 7 seconds and still finished P2. But the crazy thing was his race pace. His race pace was actually insane. Some of the times, this guy was 6, 7 tenths faster than George. Same car, by the way. Same exact car. Now, at the start of the race, you can see George was doing pretty well because he was leading, He was the fastest guy on the grid pretty much in the first few laps, 4th to 10 lap, who was the fastest guy out there because he didn't have to deal with any traffic. Lewis had to move through traffic, so it was a lot of zigzag in the beginning of the race. But you can see Lewis masked his way through that traffic, made his way through that traffic. Because starting out, Max Verstappen was faster than Lewis. But once Lewis got past that traffic, he passed Verstappen. The man was faster than Verstappen pretty much for the rest of the race. But not just that, he was faster than George Russell on average pretty much for the rest of the damn race. The only time his pace really fell off was towards the end where he lost tires and he lost that performance. But you can see he didn't make that same mistake in Abu Dhabi. In Abu Dhabi, he caught George and he left enough tires to overtake. The man learns from his mistakes. But notice the gap between him and George. When he is faster than George, the gap is insanely large. It's crazy. It is actually quite insane. Look at the gap between the two Ferraris. The solid line and the dotted line. Two Ferraris. Look at that gap. It is, especially towards the end of the race. Look at it, how similar it is. Look at how close they are. Now, look at the gap between Lewis. What's that, 5/10, 6/10 sometimes, 4/10, even 2-3 tenths faster than your teammate is already an insane amount. Look at that gap. 5-6-7 tenths sometimes? Yeah, he was on another one. Just being 1 or 2 tenths is already faster than your teammate. But 5 or 6 tenths is ridiculous. Now, I speak to the people who've watched that race. I speak to the people who saw how scary it was when Lewis was catching George. After the race, when they were in the car, George was like, mate, Lewis, you were flying at one point. And it's true, he was flying. Like, actually, like, thought the car was about to lift off at a moment. And this guy is 40 years old. He is 40 years old, fam. He is a 40-year-old man, and he's able to do some things that even the young guys can't do. Oh, yeah. So there's no doubt. Give him the car, and he is a reckoning. He is a reckoning. So, yeah, if you remember that race, the Abu Dhabi race, and you saw Lewis caught George, 13 seconds. I know how he did that. Caught George in Las Vegas, starting way down. Let's get the results from quali from the Las Vegas Grand Prix in 2024. Let's get the results. George started on pole, Carlos Sainz seconds, Pierre Gasly third. Charles Leclerc was in fourth. So you can see Charles Leclerc and the two Ferraris were similar position on the grid. Their pace was very close, and that's very impressive for Carlos to be that close in race pace to Leclerc. And this is why I tell people, yes, Lewis might take some time to adapt to the new Ferrari, but what if he doesn't? What if he doesn't? What's going to be your excuse when Lewis adapts to that Ferrari a lot faster than you think? You might think, oh, it's going to take him a few races, it's going to take him 5-10 races. What if he adapts straight away? Straight away, he's on it. What if? Yeah, Lewis started in 10th. You can see, and he had to overtake Max friggin' Verstappen in 5th. Max with a faster car. But on this particular track, on this particular day, with these temperatures, Lewis and George had the fastest car. And the fastest driver happens to be Lewis. And the way he caught George, mamma mia, he started in 10th. That's not the craziest thing. If you remember the Singapore Grand Prix from 2023, that was also insane. Let's go back to that. Why do I want to go back to the Singapore Grand Prix? Well, Carlos won the Singapore Grand Prix in a masterful way. He managed and mastered that race in such a way that, it's such high driver intelligence. He purposefully held up the other cars. Press the catch. He purposefully held up the other cars. He held up Norris, who was in second, and George, who was catching. So at this point, towards the end of the race, Lewis on lap 55 asked, how far is the gap? They told him the gap. It says 7 seconds to Norris. But that's not Lewis, because Lewis was behind George. And he was a long way behind George. He's a little bit closer now at lap 55, but at lap 45, he was a lot further away from George. And the distance between Lewis and George was the similar distance between George and Norris. What did Lewis do? Lewis caught George before George was able to catch the leaders. Carlos Sainz, Norris. Lewis caught George before George was able to catch the other guys. Lewis put so much pressure, George crashed, and Lewis took third. Yeah. So race pace, when it's time, when he has the car and the confidence underneath him, he is a scary dude. And The evidence is there to support this. Yeah, look at that pressure he was putting. And George knew Lewis was putting on some pressure, and Carlos knew. So Carlos was keeping Norris as close as possible. And Norris was doing exactly what Carlos wanted him to do. Norris would have probably been better off letting George in front or letting Lewis in front so Lewis can catch the other guys, catch Carlos, overtake Carlos, and Norris could potentially overtake Carlos as well. Well, that's a risk, but George crashed because of the insane pressure and the insane expectation. Yeah, if you remember that race, you remember how insane it was for Lewis to catch his teammate before his teammate caught the other cars. They were roughly the same distance away from, yeah, crazy, crazy insane race pace from Lewis once again. It's not the first or only time we've seen this incredible race pace from Lewis. You remember Fiji '07? Do you remember Fiji '07? Do you remember? Do you remember Silverstone '08 in the wet? Lewis was sometimes 4, 5, 6 seconds faster than other cars. Sometimes he lapped so many cars. He lapped up all cars except for two, I think. He finished over 1 minute ahead of anyone behind him. So even that Singapore Grand Prix in 2023, 2 years ago now, my goodness, time flies. Look at the dotted line. Look at the dotted line. The dotted line are George. The silver line is Lewis. You can see at the start of the race, Lewis was fastest. You can see even around lap 20, lap 25, Lewis was fastest. Lap 30, Lewis lost a little bit of pace to George. And they were about equal around lap 40. But after lap 40, 44, that lucky number 44. Once lap 44 comes in, Lewis, the monster sets in. For the rest of the race, he was faster than George. This is when George and Lewis was catching Carlos and Norris. Lewis wasn't just faster than George, and Lewis wasn't just faster than George. He was faster than Carlos. He was faster than everyone else out there. Yeah, insane race pace. Look at that solid line. The only time they got close was, I believe, that was probably when they finally caught Norris and Carlos. So they got close in race pace. Lewis didn't have a choice. There's cars in front of him. He had to slow down. But look at that. No distinction, no doubt who the fastest driver was after lap 42, 43, 44. Yeah, that's the guy that Ferrari chose to hire because Ferrari can see things Mercedes can't. So I hope this review makes a lot of sense. Now, if you don't remember watching these races, if you've never watched these races, you're not going to remember a thing that I'm saying. But if you remember watching these races, you'll remember how insane it was for Lewis to start in 10th and catch George by the end of the race. No safety car, no safety car, no safety car, just on pure damn talent. Yeah, highly intelligent drivers do that. Highly intelligent drivers do that. Do you know how many things you have to understand to put that car on the right path, on the right piece of tarmac to get that sort of results? Lewis race pace. Lewis race pace is on another level. Always been, always will be. Here's another ironic thing. They love to put Michael in front of Lewis. Same amount of championships, even though they robbed Lewis. They stole Lewis' 8th championship in 2021 Abu Dhabi. They love to put Michael in front. But why put Michael in front? Michael has less poles, less podiums. He has less wins. He has less successes. Lewis has won 6 championships with Mercedes. Michael only won 5 with Ferrari. So Lewis won more championship with a single team. People like to call it lucky. That's not luck. And now he's in another stage in his career where he's stepping up to Ferrari. And even if he doesn't win that 8th championship, we all know he's an 8, 9-time world champion already. They just robbed him too many times. They robbed him in '07. He wasn't allowed to win that championship. There is no way in heaven they would allow him to win that championship because of McLaren's shenanigans and incompetence. Nothing to do with the driver. That's why the drivers were allowed to keep their points. But why put Lewis in 2nd place compared to Michael? Lewis has accomplished more, clearly. And at 40 years old, he's still going. When did Michael retire again? I typed in when did Michael retire. They said 2012, age 43. No. Michael retired after he lost to Fernando. Yeah, there you go. After finishing 3rd in 2005 and 2nd in 2006, Schumacher retired from the sport in 2006. So that is 6 years away from 2012. So take away 6 from 43 because he retired again in 2012 at age 43. So in reality, he really retired at what, 37? Yeah, 37. Originally, he retired at 37 in 2006. He couldn't compete with the young Alonso. Can Lewis at 40 years old compete with the young Charles Leclerc? Well, he can compete with the young Max Verstappen. He can compete with the young Russell. He can compete with all those drivers, including Leclerc, that he's about to compete against now. Michael had to retire at 37. Lewis is 40 years old and he's still going. Lewis is older than Sebastian Vettel, and he's always outshined Sebastian Vettel. Yeah, Lewis is on another level. So you can forget about the criticism. You can forget about the criticism. Greatness speaks for itself. His race pace is absolutely insane. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown. I hope it made sense. But if you didn't watch these races, you won't understand what I'm trying to say. If you did watch these races, you will understand what I'm trying to say. And just to close this off, going back to that Las Vegas race, yeah, like I said at the start, Lewis was a little bit slower than George because he had to go through traffic. But after he passed the traffic, Lewis is in dotted lines, by the way. You can see it right there. Hamilton in dotted line, Russell in solid line. After he passed the traffic, and this was early in the race, perhaps lap 15 or something, Lewis was the fastest guy out there. He was fast. Look at the gaps between him and George. That thick gap. Look at that. That's how thick that gap is. Yeah. Sometimes he was 5/10. Sometimes he was half a second faster than George. Same car, by the way. Same car. The same car that Lewis struggles with in qualifying. Keep in mind what I just said. He struggles with it in qualifying. So how does he get the most out of the car in race? Yeah, the man is basically a magician. So thank you for watching, subscribe, and I will see you in our next video.